The following stories are a compilation of the top 5 videos on the Smoking Sun channel. If you enjoy these stories, make sure to subscribe for more videos and get alerted when they drop. Now, let's get started. For nearly 8 years, between 1966 and 1974, Anthony John Sully, who was also known as Jack Sully, was a police officer in San Mateo County's Millbrae, California, which is located 20 minutes south of San Francisco, Jack's birthplace. Jack had always been interested in criminal justice and wanted to become a police officer at a young age. He was trained in fingerprint detection and other law enforcement techniques. Jack had a good record as a police officer and was viewed positively by his colleagues. At home, it was a different story. You see, Jack was married to his first wife Elizabeth in 1965, and during his time as a police officer, their marriage had turned rocky, and they would end up getting divorced by 1969, and Elizabeth claimed that Jack would physically abuse her. Jack would marry his second wife Donna in 1974. Donna brought to the marriage a daughter, but 15 months later they were divorced. Donna cited that, again, Jack was physically abusive towards her. And a day after the separation, Donna's mother and her child went out to see the daughter's newly hatched ducklings, and they were horrified when they saw that all their heads had been ripped off. Jack had twisted the heads of the ducklings, and he threatened to do the same to the daughter. After Jack quit the police force, he started his own successful electrical contracting business in Burlingame, California, just outside of Millbrae, and rented a warehouse which he would also convert the front to his personal residence. In the early 1980s, Jack had begun using the services of prostitutes after developing an increased sexual appetite, and in 1982 he met Tina Livingston, and the two would later start an escort service where Jack invested thousands of dollars. Jack would start freebasing cocaine and started using escorts at his warehouse where he would subject them to rape, beatings, and other forms of violence. Tina would tell Jack that one of her prostitutes, Gloria Fravel, owed Tina $500 that was put on her credit card. Jack assured Tina that Gloria would repay, and they hatched a plan. So, on a Friday afternoon in early 1982, Tina, along with another prostitute named Angel Burns, picked up Gloria, and the three women went to Jack's warehouse under the guise of picking up camping gear. After they arrived, Jack would ask Gloria for a date, but she refused. So Jack would slap her, and he told her to go to the back of the warehouse, while Tina and Angel stayed in the front. Jack would handcuff and gag Gloria and suspended her from the ceiling. He raped and tortured her for several hours. When he was finished, Jack allowed Gloria to get up and get dressed and told her she was allowed to leave and go home. But he revoked that decision and then again gagged her. Then he tied her to the bed. While sitting in a chair next to the bed where Gloria was bound, Jack fashioned a rope with a hangman's noose. Then, after he started freebasing cocaine, he raped Gloria again, while the noose was around her neck. At one point, that gag fell out of her mouth, and Gloria started screaming. So Tina and Angel came in and tried to put that gag back in her mouth, and Angel even tried to muffle her screams with a pillow. Jack started jerking back on the rope several times until Gloria's body went limp, and her bodily fluids were released. After this, the three wrapped her body in plastic and stuffed her into Jack's van. Then Jack and Angel went to dump Gloria's body. On the way to dump off her body, Gloria would wake up and gasp, and seeing that she was still alive, Angel tried to strangle her, but Jack would use a hatchet to finish it, and this time Gloria was dead. They dumped Gloria's body off of State Route 35, and then on February the 7th, her body was discovered. When Jack read in the paper that Gloria's body was discovered by a butcher, he was amused and found it humorously appropriate. Shortly after Jack murdered Gloria, he told Tina that he wanted a completely new girl to kill because he wanted a girl before anyone else, quote-unquote, had her. Tina would later call Jack to tell him about Brenda Oakton, a 19-year-old who was a roommate of her receptionist and had worked for Tina on one occasion. So at Jack's request, Angel picked up Brenda and the two headed towards his warehouse. Brenda, understandably nervous, walked into the warehouse to meet Jack. Jack would kill Brenda with a shot to the back of the head with his .38, execution style, and put Brenda's nude body in a barrel. Brenda's roommate was told that Brenda had left to, quote-unquote, catch the bus, and Jack later commented to Gloria that the only difference between killing someone now and killing someone as a policeman was that the police had permission to do it. Jack confided to another escort service owner, Michael Sheen, that a pimp named Michael Thomas had owed him money, so he shot and killed Thomas along with his prostitute, Phyllis Melendrez. He told Sheen that he made them get on their knees before shooting them execution style and said that they bled profusely, and he placed their bodies into barrels. He told Sheen that if anybody ever ripped him off, he'd kill them. Jack asked Sheen for advice on dumping the bodies, and Sheen suggested that he dump the bodies at Searsville Lake. Jack told Sheen that he had 3 bodies, Brenda, Michael Thomas, and Phyllis, in barrels and had to get rid of them because they were stinking up his warehouse. In May of 1983, the bodies of Brenda Oakton, Michael Thomas, and Phyllis Melendrez were found in barrels at the Golden Gate Park. All 3 were shown to have been shot in the head, just like Jack told Sheen they were. Jack would have frequent dates with a prostitute named Barbara Searcy and would party and do cocaine together. Jack viewed this as more than personal dates, but would still give her money when she asked. Barbara would tell her friends that she was waiting to hear from a man she saw on several occasions and was planning on seeing him in Burlingame. It was around this time that Jack left a message on Barbara's answering machine saying that he had $50 and he wanted to date her. Barbara checked her answering machine and set up a date with Jack and went to go meet him at the warehouse. Not long after this, Jack gave Tina a satchel of some of Barbara's clothes and personal items, and he told Tina that he desperately needed to go to Barbara's home and delete a message on her answering machine. Jack told Tina that she could go to Barbara's apartment and delete the message and steal some of her personal items. She agreed and went to the apartment to attempt to do just that, but when she showed up with a male friend, she was spooked away and failed to retrieve anything from Barbara's home. When she returned to the warehouse, Jack showed Tina Barbara's body wrapped in plastic and stuffed into a green hamper outside the warehouse. They loaded Barbara's body into Jack's pickup, and when they got to a more secluded area, Jack told Tina that he wanted to drag Barbara's body behind the pickup, so they attached her body in the back of the pickup and started to drag her body. But they encountered a witness and sped away, leaving Barbara's body on the road. Barbara's body was found the next day with signs of being dragged, along with a bullet hole to the back of her head. Jack met drug dealer Catherine Barrett. Catherine offered to sell Jack 6 ounces of cocaine, so Jack's friend, Michael Francis, suggested they just steal the cocaine, and Jack agreed. And at Jack's request, Tina drove Catherine to Jack's warehouse. Then Tina went to a bar and waited for the deal to be done. And after 2 hours, Jack called Tina and told her not to worry about picking up Catherine. Well, when Tina arrived to the warehouse, she saw Michael Francis stabbing Catherine in the chest multiple times, so she turned to leave. Then Jack stopped her and told her that by the time that they were finished, nobody would recognize Catherine. Still alive and moaning, Jack was disgusted with Michael that he couldn't finish the job. And a few minutes later, Michael, looking ill, left the warehouse. He told Tina that Jack took a sledgehammer and hit Catherine in the mouth and he can hear her bones cracking. Her body was found in San Francisco Street, nude and wrapped in plastic. Examination showed that Catherine died of brain swelling, loss of blood due to the knife stabbings, and trauma inflicted with tremendous force from a blunt object. Anthony John Soley, a.k.a. Jack, was arrested on August 25, 1983, after the police had matched his fingerprints with the ones on the barrels they had found. They also found Jack's prints on the concrete that was used in the barrels. After his arrest, the police searched Jack's car and warehouse and found that the barrels were stolen from the next-door warehouse occupant. When they searched his car, they found some plastic sheeting, and and that matched the plastic wrap that was wrapped around Michael Thompson's body. They also found some white rope, and with the help of the forensic team, it was determined that rope matched that of which Barbara Searcy's limbs were tied with. They also found a pack of Benson and Hedges cigarettes that corresponded with the number of butts found on Catherine Barrett's body. After Jack's arrest, Tina went to the police and confessed her part and gave them information as well on Angel Burns and Michael Francis. In doing so, Tina was able to agree to a plea deal and received a 3-year sentence. In October of 1983, Jack was arraigned on 6 charges of murdering 5 females and 1 male. Jack had offered $10,000 to Michael Francis to take the fall for the murder of Barbara Searcy and an additional $10,000 to do the same for Catherine Barrett's murder. Jack pleaded not guilty. During the 3-week trial in the San Mateo County Superior Court, the prosecution had ample evidence and testimony, including that of Tina Livingston, to convict Jack. And on June 3, 1986, he was found guilty in all 6 murders with special circumstances of multiple murders, which means he showed no regard to society or human life. He was sentenced to death. Jack would file an appeal on Tina's testimony but was rejected. As of this video, Jack is still sitting in death row awaiting an execution. Chris Watts and Shanann Ruzick met on Facebook in 2010. The two got married in November of 2012 in North Carolina area after a year-long engagement before moving to Colorado in 2013. The couple had 2 daughters, Bella and Celeste, and Shanann was pregnant with their first son, who they were to name Nico. Chris worked at the Anadarko Petroleum Corporation in Frederick, Colorado, while Shanann worked at home selling Thrive, a health supplement from a direct sales marketing company called Lavelle. They appeared to all to be a happy family, but Chris and Shanann had money issues, and they had to file bankruptcy in 2015. The couple were also on the brink of having their home foreclosed. Believing to be a way to help reset their relationship, Shanann went and stayed with her family for 6 weeks, bringing her daughters with her, while Chris stayed in Colorado. This allowed Chris to spend more time with a woman he met at work named Nikki Kessinger. Even when Shanann was home, Chris would text Nikki flirty text messages. Chris has been described by friends and colleagues as a nice guy, but kept to himself for the most part. This is likely what Nikki saw in Chris as well and became smitten with him. Chris would tell Nikki that he was married and had 2 daughters, but that didn't stop the relationship from developing. It only became something that got in the way of the relationship. Even with Chris and Shanann keeping their troubles quiet from those around them, Shanann felt comfortable to talk about her troubles with her friend and Thrive colleague, Nicole Atkinson. Shanann and Nicole went on a week-long Thrive business trip in early August of 2018. They were scheduled to return on August the 12th, but on the return flight home due to weather conditions, their flight was delayed, and the two returned from their trip in the early morning hours of August the 13th. Nicole would drop Shanann off at her home around 2 a.m., and Shanann would turn, wave goodbye at Nicole, and Nicole waited for Shanann to make it inside her home. Little did Nicole know that this would be the last time she would see Shanann. The next day, Nicole would try to get in contact with Shanann, but Shanann did not answer Nicole or their mutual friends' calls or texts. Worried, she called the police department. Nicole, along with her son, would meet the police at the Watts home. Nicole would tell the police that Shanann had a doctor's appointment and had tried to get a hold of her to see if she needed anything. She also told the police that it was odd that Shanann's car was still in the garage. The police would knock on the door but received no answer. Chris would show up a little later, and the police, Nicole, and her son would enter the house to talk to Chris.
Here, Nicole?
Yes.
Okay. What's going on?
So my friend, we were out of town for a business trip this weekend.
All right.
And I dropped her off at 2 o'clock this morning. She's 15 weeks pregnant. She wasn't feeling well, and she had a doctor's appointment this morning at 9, and I told her to let me know if she needed me to take her. She's got 2 little girls. And she was very distraught over the weekend, wasn't eating normally or drinking, and we kept trying to force it on her because she's pregnant.
Mm-hmm.
Her husband and her supposedly are separating, but she didn't know this. She thought they were just having issues. He disclosed that to me today.
Okay.
Because I called him and I was like, have you talked or heard from Shanann since you left for work this morning? Because I can't get a hold of her. I've called, I've texted. Her car's in the garage. Her shoes she wears every single day are by the front door.
She only has one vehicle?
No, they only have the one vehicle in his work truck.
Okay, that's what I'm asking.
She
There's
took
not
the
a...
girls and went on a play date, but they're 4 and 2. She went on a play date. Why wouldn't she take in a car? They're both in the car.
Scott, how you doing?
How's it going?
So this is the only vehicle she would have?
Only one that, yeah.
She would drive? Okay.
A neighbor tells the police that he has footage from the security camera he had installed due to some break-ins. The camera would record whenever motion is detected, and he told police that there was activity at 1:48 a.m. That's when Shanann was dropped off by Nicole, and then again a little after 5 in the morning until close to 5:30, and that video shows Chris loading his truck, but his truck was partially in the garage and cannot see what he was loading. Chris goes with the police officer to the neighbor's home and watches the security camera footage. Chris is visibly nervous. After Chris leaves, the neighbor would tell the officer that he and his wife are suspicious of Chris because he hears them arguing quite often, and he and his wife did wonder if something happened to Shanann when she was on her trip.
Street. This is him at 517.
They usually park out there on the side. I just want to get everything back in. Be easier to lug everything out there, all the tools that I had to bring in.
To be completely honest with you, my wife and I were kind of wondering when she was on vacation if something happened, because I've heard them full out screaming at each other at the top of their lungs, and he gets crazy.
Does he? And that's pretty recently?
Yeah. I'm guessing that's why she went and visited people, is because she wanted to get away from the situation.
With the news of a missing mother and her children, the local media showed up at the Watts home and asked Chris for an interview. Chris obliged.
Sheriff's Department, everybody's like they're doing their best right now to figure out like if they can get a scent and see where they went. If they went on foot, they went in a car, or they went somewhere. And right now it's just like they've been on point. They're going through the house trying to get a scent, and hopefully they can pick something up to where it's going to lead to something.
With the police growing suspicious of Chris and his demeanor, they bring him in for questioning on August the 15th, 2 days after Shanann was reported missing. During the interview, they asked Chris if he was willing to take a lie detector test. Chris agreed to the test.
Regarding Shanann's disappearance, do you intend to answer all of the questions truthfully?
Yes.
Before 2018, did you ever lose your temper with someone you cared about?
No.
Did you physically cause Shanann's disappearance?
No.
After the lie detector test, the officers questioning Chris told him that he failed the polygraph, and with playing sort of a good cop, bad cop routine, they tried to get Chris to admit his involvement. Chris stated that he was having an affair and that he lied about it, but the polygraph questions never even asked about the affair. They kept pressing Chris, and when the police gave him an opportunity to come up with an excuse, he asked if his father was there and wanted to speak to him. The officers agreed, as long as he would tell them the truth after speaking with his father. What he told his father was incredible and sad at the same time. Chris would tell his father, then the police, that Shanann was the one that murdered their daughters and that he killed her in retaliation.
She took both from the dead. I freaked out in the champagne. say that. I might call the cops about it. So maybe we can dig all the bodies off or something. I mean, I didn't know what else to do. I freaked out. I didn't know nothing else to do. I didn't know what to do. So she killed OCC and choked on death. Lost it and choke her or that's just rage. Both my kids are blue and they're gone. I'm just like blind, I'm not that person, like, I'm just like, she hurt my kids. Like I did the same thing to her.
The prosecution did not believe Chris's story, and they charged him for the deaths of Shanann, Bella, and Celeste, and for ending the pregnancy of Nico. Chris maintained that he only killed Shanann, but would plead guilty to all the murders in exchange for life in prison. At the time, Colorado had the death penalty, but has since abolished it. At Chris's sentencing, family members on both sides would give victim statements. This included Shanann's parents and brother, and Chris's mother and father. Here are their statements.
What I'd like to say to the court is that Shanann, Bella, and Nico loved caring people. They loved life. They loved being around people who loved them. They always had good times. This is the first time they went to the beach this year, and they loved it. But God only knows what happened that night. Life will never be the same without Shanann, Bella, and Celeste and Nico. This is the heartless one, the evil monster, who dare you take the lives of my daughters Shanann, Bella, Celeste, and Nico. I trusted you to take care of them, not kill them. And they also trusted you. The heartless monster, and then you take them out like trash. You monster. Thought you would get away with this. I don't know how. The cameras do not lie. You carry them out like trash of the house. Yes, I seen the videotape. You buried my daughter Shanann and Nico in a shallow grave, and then you put Bella and Celeste in huge containers of crude oil. You heartless monster.
You went from being my brother, my sister's protector, one of the most loved people in my family, to someone I will spend the rest of my life trying to understand. What gave you the right to put your hands on a woman, let alone my best friend, my beloved sister, your daughters, and your son? Why weren't they enough for you? I can't even think of the right words to describe the betrayal and the hate I feel. And to be honest, you aren't even worth the time and effort it takes to put my pen to this paper. There isn't a day that goes by that I don't cry for my family. They were my whole world. All I do is ask myself why. Why would you do this? You don't deserve to be called a man. What kind of person slaughters the people that love them the most? Did you really think you would get away with this? Did you really think that this was your best option, to throw away your family like they were garbage? They deserve better, and you know it. I hope you spend the rest of your life staring at the ceiling every night, being haunted by what you've done. You took away my privilege of being an uncle to the most precious little girls I've ever known. I will never hear the words Uncle Frankie again, but you will never be called Dad again either. You'll never be able to put your hands on another woman, let alone my best friend, my beloved sister, and your son. I just can't comprehend how they weren't enough for you.
God makes no mistakes on who he puts in your life. Marriage is about love, trust, and friendship and unity. We marry for sickness and health, to death do us part. Our daughter Shanann loved you with all of her heart. Your children loved you to the moon and back. Shannon's family was her world. Shannon put a crown on your head. But unfortunately, the day that you took their life, God removed that crown. Your daughter Bella Marie sang a song proudly. I don't know if you got to see it, but it was Daddy, You're My Hero. I have no idea who gave you the right to take their lives. I want the world to know that our daughter and her children were so loved by us. There will always be protected by God and His mighty angels. I didn't want death for you because that's not my right. Your life is between you and God now, and I pray that He has mercy for you. From Shannon's mother, Bella Marie, Celeste Catherine, and Nico Lees, Nana. Thank you, Your Honor.
My name is Cindy Watts. I am the grandmother of two beautiful granddaughters, Bella Marie, Celeste Catherine Watts. I am also the mother of Christopher Watts, who I will be directing most of my statement to. First, I'd like to begin by recognizing the absolute horror of this crime and acknowledging the devastating loss that both the Rusek family as well as our family have faced. This is something we will never get over. We will always mourn the loss of our family, and in that, we are united in our grief. I am still struggling to understand how and why this tragedy occurred. I may never be able to understand and accept it, but I pray for peace and healing for all of us. Now to my son Christopher. I have known you since the day you were born into this world. I have watched you grow from a quiet and sweet, curious child who Bella reminded me so much of, to a young man who worked hard in sports and later mechanics to achieve your goals. You are a good friend, brother, father, and son. We have loved you from the beginning, and we still love you now. This might be hard for some to understand, how I can sit here under these circumstances and tell you, although we are heartbroken, although we can't imagine what could have led us to this day, but we love you. Maybe you can't believe it either. As the Lord said in Jeremiah 3:31, I have loved you with an everlasting love. Therefore, I have continued my faithfulness to you. And you, as your mother, Chris, I have always loved you, and I still do. I hate what has happened. Your father and sister and I are struggling to understand why. But we will remain faithful as your family, just as God remains faithful because of His unconditional love for us all. We love you. And we forgive you, son.
In 2020, Chris would give an interview and confess to all the murders.
I don't feel compatible. I don't feel like this is gonna work. I just, I don't want to. Like, can we cancel the trip to Aspen? She had booked a trip that week to go to some mystery 4-star luxury hotel or something.
Just the two of you, or the whole family?
Just me and her.
Okay.
And she had Amanda Thayer couldn't watch the kids that weekend or something.
Okay.
Are you crying? Is she crying?
It's back and forth. It's like, she's got mascara. She didn't wash her face when she got home. She had makeup on still, so mascara was running all over her and stuff like that. And yeah, it was nothing about that conversation. I just wish I could take all of it back. Just the whole Nikki thing back, everything. But
so then when did it turn?
As far as that conversation, it's at the end when I was telling her, I told her I didn't love her anymore. That's when it happened. I felt like she could probably listen to me just laying beside her, but I got on top of her. And every time I think about it, I'm just like, did I know I was going to do that before I got on top of her? I don't know.
Really? That's an interesting thought, Chris. Mm-hmm. You don't know if you knew.
I don't even want to know what she saw when she looked back at me, honestly.
Did you look at her? What was she doing?
She wasn't writing.
Bella came in? What'd she say?
Mom.
Did she hear something? Is that what she came?
Obviously, I think.
Okay. What'd you tell her?
Mommy, don't feel good. Being a dad was the best part of my life. I took it all away.
So what happened when you got out there?
I took Shanann out just to a place off to the site. And then
What were the girls doing when you were doing that?
just sent them back in the truck.
And then what happened after that?
CC was first. She did have a blanket. She had a blue blanket. A Yankee blanket.
So was she alive when she went into the oil tank? No?
I put the blanket over her head.
And that's how she passed. Couldn't breathe.
I put the blanket over her head. I didn't want to. No. I strangled her right there in the back seat.
Okay.
What was Bella doing?
She's sitting right beside her.
Did she understand? Did she know what was going on?
She didn't say anything.
And then the same for Bella. Just without a blanket.
With the blanket.
Oh, okay.
I didn't look. It's like every time I closed my eyes, I just hear her saying, "Daddy, no," and that was it. I felt like it was just like an anger with Shanann, with everything that I was just taking it out on everybody that was in front of me that morning. You know, I look outside every day, I'm like, what could we be doing right now? You know, right now I'd have a 5-year-old, a 3-year-old, and more than likely a 1-month-old son.
Chris Watts committed the most egregious crime. He will have the rest of his life to think upon what he did. Rodney Alcala was born in San Antonio, Texas on August 3, 1943. His full name was Rodrigo Jacques Alcala Bucur, and he was one of 4 siblings. His family moved around a lot, first to Mexico and then to Los Angeles. He had a normal childhood with many friends. After high school, he joined the Army, but he didn't stay for long and left due to a nervous breakdown. He was diagnosed with a disorder called antisocial personality disorder and was discharged from the Army in 1964. Before leaving the Army, he went AWOL, which is absent without leave, and ended up in a hospital. After leaving the Army, he briefly attended California State University and then transferred to UCLA's School of Fine Arts, where he graduated with a degree in Fine Arts in 1968. In 1968, Rodney Alcala committed his first known crime. An 8-year-old girl named Tali Shapiro was walking to school on September 25th when Alcala approached her in a car and offered her a ride. She hesitated, but Alcala claimed to know her parents, so she reluctantly got into the car. Alcala took her to his apartment and then assaulted her. As luck would have it, a passerby noticed Alcala picking up Tali and became suspicious. This person followed them and called the police. When the police arrived at Alcala's apartment, they found Tali in a bad condition, not breathing and covered in blood. They focused on saving her life, allowing Alcala to escape. Using the fake name John Berger, Rodney Alcala fled to New York City after the police found his real identity and school attendance in his apartment. He enrolled at NYU under this alias. Despite the semester being underway, Alcala convinced the admissions chairman to let him join the undergraduate School of the Arts. Although some sources claim that Alcala studied film under Roman Polanski at NYU, this is unlikely because Polanski had already moved to Hollywood in 1968. From 1968 to 1971, Alcala attended NYU and also worked as a security guard to cover his tuition fee. In the summer of 1969, he took on the role of an arts counselor at a summer camp in George Mills, New Hampshire. Alcala impressed the camp director with his skills in filmmaking and photography and was invited to return the next year. Alcala continued to work at George Mills during the summer of 1970. After graduating from NYU in June of 1971, he went back to the camp for a third summer. Sometime before this return, Alcala is believed to have committed the murder of 23-year-old Cornelia Michelle Crelly. However, this case remained unsolved until 2011, when evidence finally linked Alcala to the crime. Between 1969 and 1971, Rodney Alcala was placed on the FBI's most wanted list for assaulting and attempting to murder Tali Shapiro. During the 1970s, background checks were limited, which allowed Alcala to live freely using the alias John Berger or John Berger. By 1971, he started working as a photographer in Manhattan with a focus on young women. During his third summer at George Mills, two campers recognized Alcala from the FBI wanted poster displayed at the post office. They informed the camp directors, leading to the FBI's involvement. Alcala was arrested at the camp based on fingerprint evidence and then extradited back to California. However, once Alcala returned to California, he wasn't charged with assault or attempted murder because Tali Shapiro's family didn't allow her to testify against him. Her family had moved to Mexico by then and likely didn't want the trial to cause more trauma for her. Due to the absence of Tali Shapiro, who was the main witness, prosecuting Rodney Alcala for assault and attempted murder proved challenging. Consequently, despite facing charges of rape, kidnapping, assault, and attempted murder, Alcala managed to negotiate a plea deal in May of 1972. He pled guilty to one count of child molestation. Alcala received an indeterminate sentence of 1 to 10 years, which allowed for release upon demonstration of rehabilitation. By August 1974, a state prison psychiatrist believed Alcala had shown improvement during his incarceration, leading to his parole. However, just 2 months after his release, Alcala was arrested again for kidnapping a 13-year-old girl in Huntington Beach, California. He was accused of making her use cannabis as well. Although the girl reported being kidnapped, Alcala was only convicted of violating parole and providing drugs to a minor. After spending an additional 2.5 years in prison, Alcala was released on parole once more in June of 1977. His parole required him to regularly check in with his parole officer. After his release from prison, Alcala returned to New York City. His parole officer approved his travel request to visit relatives in the summer of 1977. During this trip, he murdered 23-year-old Ellen Jane Hover, although she likely wasn't his only victim during that time. In June 1977, Hover was reported missing, and her last known association was with a photographer named John Berger. Her remains weren't found for a year, and even though Alcala was questioned about her disappearance, he was released due to the lack of direct evidence linking him to the Hovers case. It wasn't until 2011 that Alcala was indicted for her murder. Upon returning to California, Alcala found employment as a typesetter at the Los Angeles Times. He also resumed his spree of murders. In November 1977, Alcala assaulted and killed 18-year-old Jill Barcombe. Her body was found in the foothills near Hollywood on November 10, 1977. About a month later, in December 1977, Alcala assaulted and murdered 27-year-old Georgia Wixton. He left her body in her apartment and it was discovered on December 16, 1977. The next year, Alcala participated in the game show The Dating Game on September 13th. He presented himself as a single man looking for love. However, even the contestant Jet Mills sitting next to him felt he was unsettling. Alcala, described as a successful photographer who started at a young age, had a history of child molestation and was a registered sex offender. Despite this, he managed to win the game and charm Bachelorette Cheryl Bradshaw. Yet, after the show, Bradshaw found him, quote, creepy during their private conversation and chose not to go on a real date with him. 3 months before his appearance on The Dating Game, the body of 32-year-old Charlotte Lamb was discovered in the laundry room of an apartment complex in El Segundo, California, although her identity wasn't confirmed until September 1978. In February 1979, Alcala kidnapped and assaulted 15-year-old Monique Hoyt, who managed to escape when Alcala went into a gas station bathroom. 4 months later, in June 1979, 12-year-old Robin Samso and her friend Bridget encountered Alcala. He fled when a neighbor approached, but Samso went missing after leaving her friend to attend a dance class. While on her way to work, a firefighter named Dana Crappa saw Alcala dragging Samso into the woods. Strangely, she chose not to report this observation. Samso was declared missing that day, and her friend described Alcala to a sketch artist. The sketch was shown on the news on June 22nd. On June 25th, Crappa revisited the area and found human remains, but didn't report it. By the end of June, Alcala became a person of interest in the case. Detectives compared his previous mugshot with the sketch. On July 2nd, Crappa's colleague, William Popke, discovered the remains and reported it to the authorities. The police confirmed the remains were Samso's, leading to Alcala's arrest on July 14th. In jail, one of Alcala's sisters visited him, and during their meeting, police overheard him asking her to clear out the storage locker in Seattle. Police intervened before she could, finding disturbing photos and earrings in the locker. After Robin Samso's mother identified the earrings as her daughter's, Alcala was charged. On April 30th, 1980, Alcala was found guilty of first-degree murder and kidnapping Robin Samso. In the fall of 1980, he was also convicted of assaulting Monique Hoyt. Alcala received a death sentence, but he appealed, and the California Supreme Court agreed, stating that his previous sex crimes had unfairly influenced the jurors. On August 23, 1981, his death penalty was reversed. In 1986, Alcala was retried and found guilty once more for Samso's murder, leading to another death sentence. However, in 2001, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals overturned this conviction as well. In 2010, Alcala faced his third trial for murder of Robin Samso. This time, he was also charged with the murders of Charlotte Lamb, Georgia Wixted, and Jill Barcombe. He was also charged with the murder of Jill Parento, who he killed in 1979, although the case had been dismissed previously. During this trial, Tallee Shapiro, now a grown woman in her 50s, testified for the first time. Alcala, representing himself, even apologized to her, which she found deeply disturbing. This apology came at a crucial moment when the jury was deciding between life sentence and the death penalty. Throughout the trial, Alcala didn't contest that he had killed at least 4 women. Instead, he focused on the charges related to Robin Samso. He even questioned himself in the third person, shifting his tone depending on whether he's acting as his own lawyer or as himself. On February 25th in 2010, Alcala was found guilty on 5 counts of murder, 4 counts of rape, and 1 count of kidnapping. Once again, he was sentenced to death, and this time the conviction held. Following his 2010 conviction, the Huntington Police Department released some of the photographs Alcala had taken of people. This was done in the hopes of identifying individuals in the pictures, which could potentially lead to more of Alcala's victims. Officials managed to link Alcala to Thornton's murder when the siblings recognized her in his photos. Additionally, investigators discovered that the photograph Alcala had taken was captured close to where her remains were found. While only 8 of Alcala's victims had been officially confirmed, it's believed that he may have murdered over 100 people. Some estimates even suggest the number could be as high as 130. At one point, Alcala himself claimed to have killed at least 30 women. In 2016, Alcala was charged with his 8th murder relating to the 1977 killing of Christine Thornton in Wyoming when she was 28 years old. Despite the decision not to extradite him for trial, the charges remained. In 2011, New York did choose to extradite Alcala, and he pled guilty for the murders of Cornelia Crilly and Ellen Hover. Alcala remained in California holding facility until July 24, 2021, when he died of natural causes at the age of 77. Ferdinand Waldo Damara, known as Fred, was born in Lawrence, Massachusetts in December 1921. Despite experiencing financial stability early in life, his family faced hardships during the Great Depression, prompting a move to a less affluent neighborhood. While there, Fred demonstrated early signs of cleverness, when he convinced a local store to give him and his friends free chocolates. And while growing up with his father working as a film projectionist and his uncle owning movie theaters, Fred was immersed in the world of actors and imagery. Additionally, he developed a strong interest in Christianity, which would remain a constant throughout his life. At the age of 16, Fred left home and found himself in Central Falls, Rhode Island. There he joined a Cistercian monastery as a novice. After a rough 4 years, he departed the monastery with the abbot believing his talents were better suited for the outside world. With war emerging, Fred enlisted in the United States Army, but finding it tougher than the regulations of the monastery, he soon decided to desert. And it was during that period where Fred would assume the identity of an army buddy named Anthony Ignolia, making this the first time he would assume a different identity. Using Ignolia's name, he joined the United States Navy, intending to become an officer, but his forgeries of paperwork was soon discovered, leading him to depart the Navy. Seeking refuge, Fred returned to the monastic life in a Cistercian monastery in Kentucky, this time assuming the identity of Robert Linton Finch. Robert Finch was a real doctor who Fred assumed the identity of. Now Fred would assume the identities of people who were living in relative obscurity and obtaining documents such as birth certificates and universities through the mail. With Dr. Finch's name, Fred enrolled at DePaul University in Chicago to study philosophy and ethics. Despite excelling academically, he could not commit to taking holy orders due to fear of exposure and the expectations associated with being an imposter. Fred would disappear again, leaving behind the identity of Robert Finch. After re-emerging, Fred settled in Erie, Pennsylvania, where he took on the role of a psychology instructor at a university. Later, he relocated to Los Angeles, where he worked as an orderly in a sanitarium for a period of time. Capitalizing on the identity of Robert Finch and utilizing the acquired credentials, he secured another teaching position, this time in psychology at a university in Washington State. Despite lacking formal education in the subject, Fred managed to stay one step ahead of his students by diligently studying the textbook. He found contentment at Washington State, enjoying his teaching role, and unintentionally grew complacent, establishing a friendship with the local sheriff, Fred Tamlin. Fred was even appointed as a special deputy, publicly endorsing Sheriff Tamlin's re-election campaign through speeches. However, everything changed when the sheriff unexpectedly arrived with an arrest warrant for Fred. At the police station, Fred encountered 2 FBI agents who had identified him as a deserter. Consequently, he endured an 18-month sentence at the United States Disciplinary Barracks in San Pedro, California. Upon his release from prison, Fred briefly returned to his hometown of Lawrence. However, the allure of assuming a fresh identity proved irresistible to him. This time, he made the choice to adopt the persona of a Dr. Cecil Hammond, a biologist residing in Kentucky. Under this new name, Fred secured a position at Massachusetts Eye and Ear, a renowned hospital affiliated with Harvard that remains in operation to this day, offering a combination of education, treatment, and research. Concurrently, Fred enrolled in the evening law classes, although he only completed the first year without obtaining any qualifications. Fred strongly believed in learning through the hands-on experience, favoring on-the-job training. Along these endeavors, he made the decision to depart from Boston and set his sights on Alfred, Maine, heading northward. In the state of Maine, Fred once again embraced a religious position, this time as a member of the Brothers of Christian Instruction, an esteemed teaching order. The brothers warmly welcomed Fred, considering him a highly accomplished individual. The local newspapers even featured an article highlighting his arrival, which spelled early disaster for Fred. A student of the real Dr. Hammond came across the news story and decided to inform the genuine Dr. Hammond. And by a stroke of luck, Dr. Hammond happened to be a procrastinator who never got around to taking any actions against Fred. During his tenure with the brothers, Fred contributed significantly to their venture, particularly in navigating the red tape required for the institution to be recognized as American College. His extensive experience in manipulating systems proved invaluable in this regard. Before formally taking his vow, Fred was sent to New Brunswick, Canada to study theology. It was there that he struck up a friendship with a local general practitioner named Dr. Sear. According to Fred's account, the bond originated when Dr. Sear treated a fellow monk for arthritis. Learning of Fred's background as a quote-unquote biologist before joining the monastery, Dr. Sear sought his advice. Fred had come across an article in a medical journal discussing the use of bee venom in arthritis treatments and suggested it to Dr. Sear. Remarkably, the treatment proved successful, significantly bolstering Dr. Sear's admiration of Fred. This admiration led to a critical error on Dr. Sear's part. As Fred returned to Maine, Dr. Sear mistakenly asked him to transport his medical credentials with him. The purpose behind this request was Dr. Sear's aspiration to obtain an American medical license in addition to his existing Canadian one. However, the reality of these credentials would never reach their intended destination. When Fred returned to Maine, he received news that the brothers had successfully acquired their college charter. But to his disappointment, he learned that he had not been chosen as the head of the college, leading to feelings of anger and resentment. Fueled by these emotions, he decided to quote-unquote borrow one of the brothers' automobiles and swiftly made his way to Boston. From there, he took a bus back to New Brunswick. When he arrived, Fred made a deliberate choice to enter a Navy recruiting office using Dr. Sears' credentials to enlist as a Navy surgeon. In the spring of 1951, he received an assignment to a naval base in Halifax for a period of 2 months. During his time there, Fred fell in love with a local woman, which may have been a unique experience in his life. The couple made plans to marry once Fred completed his tour of duty. However, during this period, Canada was actively involved in the Korean War. In June, Fred set out on the destroyer Cayuga as part of his military service obligations. Fred's routine responsibilities on the Cayuga included a wide range of medical tasks, from routine treatments and diagnosis to even minor procedures, like extracting a problematic tooth for a captain. Given his lack of experience in the dentistry, Fred resorted to stalling the captain and quickly read up on the subject to gain knowledge of the procedure. Despite his initial apprehension, he managed to successfully complete the tooth extraction, maintaining the illusion of his expertise. But then Fred faced a big challenge when the ship arrived in Korea. A Korean ship brought 3 injured men, one of them who had a bullet stuck in his heart, needed surgery. And Fred knew it would be difficult because the ship didn't have the right tools to keep things clean, and he had never done the surgery before. Still, he found the bravery to go ahead. He decided to make small cuts to avoid having to sew too much. Amazingly, the surgery worked and the Korean soldier's life was saved. But this big accomplishment changed everything for Fred. It was the moment when his secret lies and pretending started to catch up with him. The results of his actions that would eventually cause his failures soon began. When Fred arrived in Korea, he was shocked and saddened by the terrible conditions and lack of medical help available. Because he deeply cared about helping others as a Christian, he felt strongly that he had to do something and asked the captain if he can help as a volunteer in the community. Fred's selfless dedication quickly gained attention, and people started to admire him for his unselfish actions. His reputation grew even more when a military leader in the area personally praised him for the amazing things he was doing. Eventually, the ship's radio officer, who understood the importance of being mentioned in official messages, decided to write about Fred's adventures. The story included the gripping details of the surgery Fred performed on the ship's deck to save someone's life. Despite Fred's effort to stop the officer, the temptation of getting recognized was too strong to resist. As fate would have it, the radio officer's story caught the interest of the media corps and found its way into the newspapers, drawing widespread attention. The real Dr. Sear, upon reading about these heroic exploits, was taken aback by the news and immediately reported the matter to the appropriate authorities. Consequently, the captain of the Cayuga was contacted, leading to a series of inquiries and investigations. Though the captain staunchly asserted that the existence must be some mistake, He was ultimately compelled to send Fred back to Canada. Fred cherished his time in the Canadian Navy, and even after his true identity was revealed, his shipmates remained loyal and sent a Christmas card showing their friendship despite his flaws. However, thorough investigations exposed Fred's deceptions and fake names. To avoid negative attention, the authorities decided to deport him back to the United States. Returning home, Fred spoke to a journalist from Life magazine, hoping to tell his side of the story. The article mentioned his disappearance and Fred traveling across the country, working various jobs and occasionally using fake names, and Fred's battle of guilt and his fear of being exposed. In 1955, Fred took on the persona of Dr. Benjamin Jones and applied to work at the Texas Department of Corrections. He knew his application would eventually reach the right person and even created 8 fake character references. Fred started as a guard at a prison farm, but was disturbed by the harsh conditions and the brutality of the guards. He transferred to the Prison Recreation Department, hoping to create a more positive environment. He performed well and became the deputy warden at a new prison called Shamrock, designed for violent inmates. Despite the challenges, Fred excelled because of his understanding of psychology, fearlessness, and the occasional use of tranquilizers. He joked that it was like Texas' first hospital for the criminally insane. However, one prisoner recognized Fred from the Life magazine interview. When confronted by his superior, Fred denied any connection. But once out of sight, he hastily packed his belongings, retreated from his room, and swiftly left in his car, abandoning everything behind. In 1956, Fred arrived in North Haven Island as Martin Goggart, a teacher. He taught English and Latin and became well liked by the locals. However, Fred's drinking raised suspicion, and a mother ordered an old issue of Life magazine. Confirming her suspicions, she collected Fred's fingerprints on a glass and sent them to the FBI. On February 14, 1957, Fred was arrested and removed from the island. Fortunately, the judge showed leniency and sentenced him to 2 months of probation for lacking a legitimate teacher's license. A biography of Fred's life titled The Great Imposter was published in 1959, which brought him fame and made him well known. Using his newfound fame, Fred ventured into the entertainment world and played a minor role in a Hollywood film called The Hypnotic Eye. But Fred realized he did not enjoy real acting. During his time in Los Angeles, Fred appeared on Groucho Marx's game show, You Bet Your Life. He showed his charm and humor while discussing his various credentials. Fred and his partner won $2,000 on the show. Fred even joked about donating his share to the Feed and Clothe Fred DeMara Fund. In 1961, a film called The Great Imposter, based on Fred's life, was released. Fred wasn't happy with how he was portrayed by Tony Curtis in the movie. By then, Fred gained a considerable amount of weight that affected his health. He decided to leave his life of impression and became a counselor at a home shelter in downtown Los Angeles. In 1967, Fred earned a degree from a Bible college and became chaplain at a hospital in Anaheim, California. In 1970, his past threatened his job, but the chief of staff vouched for him, allowing him to keep his position. Fred focused on his role as chaplain and did not talk much about his past. By 1980, Fred's health declined, and he could not work as a chaplain anymore. He became a patient himself and passed away in 1982 from complications due to diabetes. Fred had remarkable qualities, but that was overshadowed by his tendency to impersonate others and commit crimes. In the end, Fred's life became a tragedy marked by missed opportunities and failure to embrace his true self. It's regrettable that we will never know what the great imposter could have achieved if he had chosen honesty over deception. Richard Hickok and Perry Smith were a pair of ex-convicts from the Kansas State Penitentiary, today known as the Lansing Correctional Facility. While there, they had learned from a former cellmate named Floyd Wells of a Kansas family where he was employed as a farmhand about a safe they had on their property that contained a large sum of money. Hickok and Perry were all too happy to pay the family a visit, so they drove over 400 miles across Kansas with the intent to rob them. Early in the morning on Sunday, November 15th, 1959, they arrived in Holcomb, Kansas, and entered the unlocked door of Herbert and Bonnie Clutter. Herbert Clutter, who went by Herb, was a successful farmer, devout Methodist, and a community leader, and Bonnie Clutter was a homemaker and the mother of their 4 children. 23-year-old Ivana was married and lived in Nebraska, and Sister Beverly was away as a 21-year-old student in nursing school. The other 2 children that were living at home were Nancy, who was described as a boy-crazy 16-year-old, and her brother Kenyon, a 15-year-old who has been described as a loner of sorts that played musical instruments and tinkered with electronics and machines. When Hickok and Smith entered the home, they found Herb Clutter downstairs and asked him where the safe was. Herb told them that there was no safe. So after waking the rest of the family, they shoved the family into a second-floor bathroom and searched the house for the safe that Wells told them that was there, but came up with nothing. So they decided to separate the family and took Bonnie and tied her hands in front of her and tucked her into her bed. Then they took Nancy and tied her up and put her into her bed. Then they took Kenyon and Herb to the basement and put them in 2 separate rooms. They placed Kenyon on a sofa in one room and Herb on a mattress in the other. Hickok and Perry had already decided that they were not going to leave any witnesses, and after they debated briefly, decided how they were going to do it. Smith, who had always been deemed unstable, shot Herb in the head, but not before unsuccessfully stabbing him in the throat with a hunting knife. After that, the pair went into the adjoining playroom, and Smith shot Kenyon, killing him instantly. The 2 headed upstairs into Nancy's room and shot and killed her, before heading into the room where Bonnie was and shot her in the side of the head, killing her instantly. Each of the 4 Clutter family members were shot in a single shot blast to the head. Now after the murders, they gathered up the shotgun shells, grabbed Kenyon's portable radio, and $50 they found, likely from a recently cashed $60 check, and fled the scene. They did, however, leave one thing behind: a boot print. Shortly after 9 a.m., a friend of Nancy's, Nancy Ewalt, and her family arrived to pick her up for church, and they rang the doorbell but got no answer. So they went to the back door and knocked, still no answer. They saw the Clutter's cars were in the garage and everything looked normal, so the Ewalts went to another friend of Nancy's, Susan Kidwell's home, and asked the Kidwell family if they knew where the Clutters were, which they didn't. They tried calling the Clutters but received no answer. So Susan went over to the Clutters with the Ewalts, thinking that they were still sleeping. After ringing the doorbell again, they found that the door was unlocked, so they went inside with the girls yelling, "Nancy, it's time to wake up and go to church." They noticed Nancy's purse laying on the floor near the back door, so the 2 friends headed up to Nancy's room. Susan entered the room first and came out screaming. Nancy Ewalt wasn't sure why Susan was screaming, so she entered the room and saw Nancy on the bed. Thinking that she was still sleeping, she went over to wake her up and saw blood spattered on the wall. Clarence Ewalt, Nancy Ewalt's father, thought to call an ambulance but noticed the phone was off the hook and that the phone line had been cut, so he left to find a phone and called the police. An investigation into Hickok led back to Floyd Wells, Hickok's former cellmate. He told investigators that he had told Hickok that one day, when he worked at the Clutter farm, Herb Clutter had mentioned to him that he paid out $10,000 that day. Mr. Clutter was paying off a lumber bill for his home being built, and Wells assumed that Herb had a safe on the property. Wells said they talked often about Herb Clutter and that he was wealthy. Wells then told investigators that Hickok mentioned to him of a friend named Perry Smith, and that they had planned, once released, that they would do some more robbing to earn enough money to go buy a boat for deep-sea fishing. After going through the employee records of Herb Clutters over the past 10 years, they saw Wells' name, which corroborated his story. During their investigation, the investigators learned that Hickok had written a $192 hot check to an Alco store in the Kansas City area. Then they had learned that Hickok was working in Olathe, Kansas at Sands Paint Shop, and the investigators went and spoke with Sands' owner, and he told them that Hickok was working there but stopped showing up after November the 20th. So they put out an arrest warrant for Hickok for the bad checks he wrote. They went and visited Hickok's parents' home, and while there developed an alleged itinerary of Hickok and Smith of that particular weekend. Hickok's mother informed the KBI that he and Smith were going to Fort Scott, Kansas to find Smith's sister, and that he returned home shortly on November 15th, the day of the murders, shortly after lunch, but hadn't seen him since. They searched the home and found a bloody shirt and a shotgun. The investigators went and talked to Perry Smith's sister, Dorothy Marchant. Miss Marchant informed the investigators that she was afraid of her brother and did not associate with him, and said that he was a lot like his father and that they did not respect other people's rights or care how they lived. After a daily press conference, novelist Truman Capote was introduced to the head of the KBI, Al Dewey. Capote informed Dewey that he was there to do a story on the family and the effects on the little town, and wasn't concerned if the case was solved or not. That didn't go over very well with Dewey, as he was very concerned that the case was solved. They were not about to give out detailed information to any individuals, so they shut him down. During the investigation, Hickok and Smith sold some items that they had stolen, and the two went down to Mexico. And when the money got low, they bought a pair of pistols, sent their belongings ahead of them, and headed back to the United States with the intent to rob people for more money. After starting off on the wrong foot, Truman Capote became friends with Al Dewey and his wife and would be invited over to the family's home. He became up to date on the Clutter murder investigation, and on Wednesday, December the 30th, while hosting Truman and Harper Lee, Dewey received a critical phone call from Las Vegas, Nevada, who had received an attempt to locate from the KBI with a license plate number and vehicle description. They had located the car, and in the trunk was a box sent from Mexico, and informed Dewey that he had Hickok and Smith in custody. In the box were boots that matched the ones that left a boot print in the Clutter home. When the KBI agents arrived in Las Vegas to pick up both Hickok and Smith, Agent Harold Nye interviewed Hickok and started out talking about the bad checks he had written. Then Nye started talking about the weekend of the Clutter family murders and why a boot print of Hickok's was found at the scene. Hickok ended up confessing to being part of it, but insisted it was Smith who had shot the Clutters. Now, Smith refused to talk to investigators at this time. A couple days later, they were put into two separate cars on the return to Kansas, and Nye told Smith that Hickok had confessed to the agents. When Smith saw that Hickok was talking in the car ahead of him, he was angered and proceeded to give his take on the situation, and said that Hickok had invited him from Las Vegas to Kansas City because he had a setup that was a cinch. After staying the night at Hickok's parents on November 13th, they took Hickok's shotguns and got a new tires on Hickok's car and headed for Holcomb, Kansas, stopping on the way for rope. At the trial, the county attorney read 8 names, each of the Clutter family, twice, once for each of the defendants for the murders in the first degree. The prosecution spent 4 days on their case in chief, along with their 2 confessions, sought the death penalty. The defense's only argument was that they were insane and pleaded for life in prison, but the state psychologists testified that they knew what they did was wrong, and it took the jury less than 30 minutes, all voting for their death. Then on April 14th, 1965, both Hickok and Smith were hung for the murders of Herb, Bonnie, Nancy, and Kenyon Clutter. The surviving 2 sisters and other extended family members were not too happy with Truman Capote taking pictures of himself in front of the Clutter home and thought it was distasteful. They refused to watch the movie In Cold Blood that was based on Capote's book of the Clutter family, and insisted that in the book, Capote embellishes many of the things and did not find that respectful of their family. Thanks for watching, and let me know in the comments below which story was your favorite. And, as always, see you next time.